1,000 people, 500 people, 2,000 people, no one cares from that. They destroy all the nations. In that is not extremes, including that the Yazidim, the Turkmanim, the Druzim, the Alawim, everyone that is not extremes, they kill him, they cut him. No one speak about that, because no leadership in the world now. No one care from that. I'm only the one in this area that do so much loudly against the extremes. And I think it is the time to call everyone to come to help. We beginning with the third world. If we continue and not stop the violence in Syria and in the Middle East. People did not understand how much is danger that Russia in this war. And of course, maybe we found another people, another states, very important in this conflict, and this is take us to new war, third war, that danger for the world. And of course, I need from all of you to come to help us with the peace process. We need peace. Important for us, peace. We could give every price to make the peace. But, thank you very much. But the important thing, we need to close to what we call it the coalition of Saudi Arabian, because in the Islam also, there are more than 99% liberal Islam that we important to cooperate with them against the extremes, including that exactly the coalition of Saudi help us to go together and make the peace. Thank you very much and good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Kara. I think we can have a louder applause for that. A man of peace, a non-Jew working in the Israeli government, I think needs a lot of respect from all of us. Thank you for being a trailblazer. Now it's my privilege to introduce Mr. Bob Blackman, Member of Parliament from the United Kingdom, who will now address this august gathering.
Namaskar. Ladies and gentlemen, a great privilege to speak from the same stage where Sri just a few minutes ago set us a real challenge. Now, there's a few less people here now. I can't think why. But the key point that he made is that leadership is most important when there's chaos in the world. And there is truly chaos throughout the world right now. The world is a more dangerous place in which to live probably than any time in our history. And if you think about the internet, the social media, rolling 24-hour news coverage, we can find out what's going on in the world anywhere we are. And the key point then is that terrorists, people that will divide us, use the opportunity to create terror, to create division, and they know it'll be front page news in the newspapers, it'll be the headline news on the newsreels, it will strike terror into everyone. We know that it's a much less secure place than it's ever been. And as nation states have become the order of the day once again, we have seen divisions amongst people, more civil wars than ever before. But here comes the challenge. Climate change and the impact on humanity abusing the planet will mean that it'll become even more dangerous. Because as food becomes in shortage, as water becomes in shortage, people will choose to migrate to where food and water is available. So the challenge for nation states And we're seeing it across Europe, we're seeing it across the world right now. As people flee from areas of conflict, that will become just a trickle compared to the flood that may well follow unless we address what Sri set us as a challenge. That is for the world to come together, to show true leadership, so that no one should starve, no one should go hungry, no one should go without water, and everyone should have the opportunity of a job. And one of the things that strikes me that always I think about is at the end of the Second World War, just 71 years ago, the population of Europe, denuded after that terrible catastrophe of World War II, actually still made up 25% of the world's population. Today, after 71 years peace in Europe and conflicts all over the world, the population of Europe now is less than 15% of the world's population. We here in India are in a country with a very young population, people that are mobile, upwardly wanting to grow. And instead, we have the challenges of people preventing people from travel. So my solution is that we have to break down world trade barriers. We have to make sure that the countries of the world get a fair price for their goods, a fair price for their minerals, and a fair price for their efforts. We have to have ethical trade. We have to trade together, because if you trade ethically, if you do a bargain with someone and both sides feel that they've got something out of it, they'll trade again. If they feel shortchanged, if they feel cheated, they'll never trade again. They'll never trust people. And what we have to do in this world is build more trust, more cooperation, and break down the barriers. So, ladies and gentlemen, a great privilege for me to share the stage with so many distinguished politicians and leaders. And the thing that above all else, that it strikes me about leadership is the language that we use. We have to recognize, not only as leaders, that we can inspire people, but we have to recognize the ability of the people to be inspired. And the greatest leaders in the world are leaders of areas where the people say, look what we've done together, not look what our great leader has done. And so if we can get away from the concept of demagogues and think of what the people together can achieve, we will have achieved great leadership in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blackman. And, you know, in Art of Living, that is something that really strikes us on a daily basis. The not-so-good people get together and become strong, but the good people somehow stay silent and stay disunited. Whenever we come to forums like this, like the morning session when I was moderating, I was thinking of my college days. We had read about Plato and his concept of a philosopher king. I was seeing the education qualifications of everybody. I was seeing the contributions. And I was really seeing there was an element, what was the unifying element, that they were very nice, very good human beings. Each of those leaders cared so much for their people. The Nigerian president had stepped down voluntarily. He had brought in democracy into a place riven by tribal factionalism. You heard from the others. And same thing, Mr. Blackman, is what was behind when we conceptualized the World Cultural Festival and the Global Leadership Forum, that good people somehow don't get a platform, don't come together, and don't get united and strong. So that is the biggest thing. If we can get that together, we were seeing a lot of networking happening amongst good people. There was an NGO looking after Asian elephants, was saying, can I work in India? Can I work in Nepal? Immediately I can get funds. our elephant populations are going down. Things like that start happening. So that's the great thing. I think all of you have contributed to it by coming here and giving us your time and enabling us to get such wonderful speaker. So please take a bow and applaud yourselves as the wonderful audience. Yes. Now my privilege for a very good person I had the privilege of spending some time with. She's a professor, Dr. Petra de Sutter, member of the Belgian Senate, somebody who works on women issues as well. A lot of good work being done by her. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much for this introduction. I prepared a little text because I wanted to explain a little bit where I came from, what I'm doing here, and hopefully what I can contribute to the discussion. So as you said, I'm a gynecologist. I'm a specialist in reproductive medicine. And I'm involved at Ghent University in a lot of clinical but also research work for more than 20 years. Now, from my work, working with infertile couples, with women's issues, reproductive health, I have very quickly been interested in other aspects of my work, more psychological. Is this better? This is better? More psychological aspects, ethical aspects of infertility. Why do people so desperately want children? And what, if they don't come spontaneously, what are they willing to do? They go to the other side of the world, if necessary, to have that child. So also the philosophical and ethical aspects were of interest to me, and in my medical work I soon understood that behind all the medical technical problems that we face, we also have to pay attention to the human beings behind these problems. And this brought me to ethics. And then I started to go into ethics committees. I learned a lot about medical ethics, and I understand very well that whatever we do in medicine, the ethical side needs to be taught to students as well as the technical sides. And you know, in medical ethics, there is 4 principles, which are beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, and justice. And we need to get the balance right for these 4 principles in whatever we do. And now, when I ask medical students about ethical questions, they usually answer in a very radical way, black or white, because they're young people, they're 20, 22. Only when a person grows older and experiences life and its ups and downs, judgment becomes milder. And if I taught one thing in life so far, it is not to judge other people, but to try to understand what drives a person to take a particular decision without imposing my own convictions and views. And so this ethical basis in medicine is something that I find extremely important. I soon started to be internationally active, and this brings me to the boundaryless nations aspect of this session. I was in all kinds of commissions in France, in other countries of Europe. I came to the United States and to India for my medical and scientific work a lot, and I have learned that there are different views for the same reality, and it taught me a lot of humility in my convictions and respect and a will to understand other opinions. I will tell you a little personal story that happened in my medical practice. In 2006, I lost a patient during a traumatic delivery where both woman and daughter died. And it affected me a lot. And as a gynecologist, these things happen. But what struck me mainly was that this woman came in the middle of the night, and I didn't recognize her because it was really an emergency situation. Only before she lost consciousness, she took my hand and she grabbed my hand. She said, you know, doctor, you gave me my child, please save it now. And then I realized that I had treated her 9 months before for infertility, and I didn't recognize her. So this traumatized me, and I swore that every patient that I would treat from that moment would be that woman. And this is an oath I swore, and I will fulfill. Thank you. Until the last patient I will see. So do not judge and always put yourself in the place of the other has been one of the lessons I learned. And I know it's not very new and original because all religions teach the same thing. But it has been for me a life-changing principle once I understood it. Now after that, the last few years, I wanted to become more engaged at the societal level in public health and healthcare, and I became a member of the Belgian High Health Council and the Royal Academy of Medicine. But working there taught me that being an expert and giving expert advice to ministers is very important, definitely. But the real important level of decision making is, of course, political. And that brought me, a bit by accident, to politics. I had been politically active before at a local level behind the scenes. I'm an ecologist, I want to tell you that. And I was asked to be member of the list for the European elections in 2014. I was not elected, but afterwards appointed to the Belgian Senate. And there, actually, an incredibly interesting journey started for me 2 years ago, because it brought me to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And I started to understand how Europe really functions, not at the financial and economical level, but at the level of human rights, democracy, and rule of law, because that is what the Council of Europe deals with. And it has 47 member states, under which also Russia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Armenia, so countries in Europe which are not part of the EU. I became vice president of the Committee of Migration, Refugees and Displaced Persons, and I'm a member of the Committee of Social Affairs. Now, my political program is actually simple. I fight for equality and justice in every subject I deal with, independently of religious or any other beliefs. And I'm still a doctor, of course. I'm mainly involved in public health and healthcare. I'm also an ecologist. So I'm interested in the relationship between our environment and our health, agriculture, regarding chemicals, endocrine disruptors, climate change, and sustainable energy. I believe economy and trade are important for human development, but not at the expense of our planet and the future generations. I can see why people are afraid of the massive influx of refugees as we now experience in Europe. But I can also see the individual suffering from people who flee terror and war. I can understand industry and mobility is important for development, but not when it poisons our air and destroys our nature. And I can understand why food and agricultural corporations need to make profit, but again, not at the expense of public health. Now, as an individual who tries not to judge and who's not convinced that I know the one and only truth, I fight for the rights of minorities, for girls and women in the first place when it comes to gender equality and sexual and reproductive rights, but also for refugees when it comes to the right for asylum as stated in the Geneva Convention, for disabled people when it comes to their right for care and equal treatment, for people who have another skin color, speak another language, or have another religion. This is my political agenda. It's not very original, because I'm merely following other people who believe the same principles and believe a better world for all is really possible. I stand for you here, dear colleagues and friends, and of course I would call upon all of you, all of us, to follow these basic ethical principles in whatever we do, whether we run a business, whether we are artists, professors or lawyers, parliamentarians or government officials. Let us all work together to make this world a better place. I thank you.
Thank you for those wonderful thoughts. And it's a reality across the world. If you see, even in the developed markets like Europe and America, the gender inequality remains. I'll give you a small statistics for India, which troubles me a lot personally. 50% of the medical students are girls. So as far as doctors graduating, 50% are girls. 5 years down the line, about 30% of doctors are women. 10 years down the line, only 19% of practicing doctors are women. So it remains a fight for all of us. We talk about big things, boundaryless nations, but a lot of it starts from home and starts from how we bring up the girl child, what kind of facilities we'll give women so they can be, and women have to have twin careers. They have managed the house also. They're managing careers as well. How do we facilitate that they are not burdened with two careers and there's an equality in that sharing? Can we have all women in this room stand up and take a bow for us and take an applause from us? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor, for bringing out this very deep thought. I was told, because I talk a lot, I was told by my handlers that don't talk as much as you usually do. You don't let the participants talk, but I wanted to share this story. And see, I've got a message already. I've been told I am allowed one sentence only between speakers. I shall adhere to that. Yeah. And the good news is, 3 speakers, when they heard me in the morning, they have declined to come on this session. So we have time for question answers after my good friend, a good mentor for all of us, a very noble person, somebody who is so loved by whoever comes in touch with him. That's the only introduction I would like to give for Joe Leinen, member of European Parliament from Germany. Over to you, Joe.
Yeah, dear Ajay, and all of you, it is really a privilege due to Sri Ravi Shankar and the art of living that we come together in this outstanding forum today and hopefully tomorrow. And already till now, I have heard so many brilliant ideas, so much inspiration that open one's mind. And I hope that we keep that when we go home and that we act accordingly. And I want to tell you a story, and that goes perfectly in our topic of boundaryless nations or borderless nations, because borders are part of my life since I'm born. I'm coming from a little village on the German-French border, and as you might know, after every war between France and Germany, and there have been 3, that border has changed. So stupid it is, as it was. And my grandfather, in that little village of 1,000 inhabitants, he was a local farmer. He never went out of his village, but in his life, he had 5 passports and 5 currencies. He was French, German, French, German, French. So he was 5 times changing nationality. Besides myself, I was changing 3 times nationality. I was German, French, German. So you could see that borders are sometimes stupid and totally artificial. And I would give a message to this forum and to the world, to the politicians and the governments: don't change borders, open borders in this century. It gets more and more contradiction that with the internet we have a globalized world, we have global networks, we can communicate. But on many parts of the world, artificially, we are restricted by national politics and borders behind that restrict and block people to get together, to meet, to exchange, to enjoy. And therefore, I'm really happy that since 15 years, let's say, with the Schengen Treaty, a little village again in Luxembourg, not far from me, 40 kilometers, there's Schengen, a little village on the Mosel River. We have now 30 countries in Europe normally without borders. But one could see in the last months how thin the ice is. When there was the terrorist attack in Paris, every state started to make border controls. And I must say it serves nearly to nothing, because terrorists are not coming like this over borders. They have their special ways to do so. Therefore, I would say security intelligence organizations, they have to cooperate. They have to be world-class, first-class, but not to control day by day people who go over borders and have nothing to do with terrorism. At least my opinion. It might not work everywhere, but in most parts of the world, these border controls are showing state power, but they really don't serve to the purpose. I have not seen a terrorist that have been kept on the border. Yeah, they come somehow else. Now, as well, it was mentioned the migration. Here, I'm deeply convinced that we need an international solution, and that national solutions, building fences, closing borders, is not a solution. And we should refrain and restrict from keeping people away, because we only shift the problem to the neighbors. And I have full respect in the Middle East, where there's so much turmoil, on Jordania, on Lebanon, on other countries who are so open to refugees that have fled from war and from terror. So everywhere where you have humanity and human values, we must applaud very much that they do so, and they receive people that have to flee and have to go away from their home. Now, we are a global village, and in the 21st centuries, we will be even more a global village. But on global level, we have still very antique structures. We have no global governance. And if you look on the United Nations, the only global organization that we have, it is not representative. How could it be that India is not in the leading post? How could it be that Africa has no country up there? And therefore, I think we have to work for a more representative United Nations. And it has to be more democratic. Good governments tend to partly be democratic in the world. But I think with global politics, we have to connect more and more to people. So I'm part of a campaign for a global parliament, for a world parliament. We need to have people's representatives sitting together. And I would say that there would be a much other dynamic to discuss global problems and even to come to solutions, even when not everybody is agreeing. So I think next to the General Assembly in the United Nations with the governments, we need a global, a world parliament with all the people representatives. That would be a big step forward. Now, to be short, I started with my story between Germany and France. We had 3 wars in order to become good friends after we have been enemies. And I always, when I come to India or to Pakistan, say, look, you had 3 wars over Kashmir. Why not to stop to be enemies and to become friends? It's time to open borders and not always to think about changing borders, and then we come to peaceful solutions. And that I wish all nations and world. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. As ever, very profound, but very simple as well, so we all understand the wisdom that's coming. The next person I would like to introduce you, I would like to give a small insight as well. I feel very inferior when I met him. When I meet him, he's doing his speech largely in English, he said. He's the Member of Parliament from Germany. I was for 6 years a managing director for a German bank and the country head. And he asked me, do you speak German? I said, no. So, respect to you, sir, for taking on the task of delivering your speech in Germany. We have our own Mira with him, who's translating online. But over to Andre Hahn, Dr. Andre Hahn, Member of Parliament, Germany.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Nations without borders. That's a dream of a lot of people. And let me say at first that I too would like to see much less nationalism, much more international cooperation, and a greater willingness on the part of all nations on earth to tackle existing problems and seek solutions together. However, it seems to me that developments in many parts of the world are moving in precisely the opposite direction, the wrong direction, I believe. In Europe, I'm currently observing less community spirit, a drop in solidarity, and growing selfishness and nationalism. Some countries are even building new border fences to keep out refugees from the Middle East and North Africa. There have also been developments in another important policy area that ultimately constitute nothing less than new walls and borderways. Before I became member of the German Bundestag in 2013, I sat in the Saxony State Parliament for 19 years. There I had personal experience of how difficult it can be to agree on uniform standards even within a single country in education policy, for example. Germany is a highly modernized country, and yet within our federal system of 16 different states, we really do have 16 different education acts, 16 different school systems, and 16 different curricula in Germany. Structures like these have their roots in the late 19th century and are anything but modern. They are not equal to the challenges of the 21st century. However, we cannot change that because we have no majority to change the constitution in Germany. And that's the problem. But if there is so little willingness to compromise at national level, how can we seriously expect this to work any better in international bodies like the European Union, for example? There is certainly no sign of exemplary behavior in how the EU is dealing with the increasing number of refugees in Europe, for example. Right now, there are more refugees and displaced persons in the world than at any time since the end of the World War II. We speak about more than 60 million people. Of those, more than 1 million have come to Germany in the past year. And I'm pleased that the great majority of the German citizens have welcomed those refugees in a spirit of friendship, and that many of them are actively supporting integration efforts. To date, however, the European Union has not been able to agree on a fair distribution of refugees. Some EU countries are refusing to accept any refugees at all, while others are proposing extremely low figures that are nothing more than symbolic, and asserting that they certainly won't take any Muslims. I think that is not acceptable. I believe national boundaries are irrelevant for refugees, to people in extreme need. They are trying to escape war, hunger, and poverty, for which in the most case their home country is not or not alone responsible. That is why here in Delhi it's very important that we also can discuss the causes of migration and flight and possible ways of tackling them. That could send out an encouraging signal from here. We had such a positive signal emergent from the United Climate Conference in Paris. The attending parties managed to agree on important goals like limited global warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius. Now, we all have to do our utmost to ensure that this goal is really implemented all over the world and across all nation borders. In my view, a further key issue is the peaceful resolution of existing conflicts between and within nation states. War do not solve problems, they only create new ones. Instead of exporting even more weapons, even to crisis-hit regions, we must significantly step out our development aid to poorer countries. I think, it's my last sentence, it's a disgrace that a country as rich as Germany is still a long way from fulfilling the pledge to contribute 0.7% of its gross national income to development aid. We can do this, and I think we have to do this. Thank you.
Mr. Hahn is from East Germany. I'm from West Germany. We got united 25 years ago after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And he had to learn Russian in school, where I could learn French and English. So I praise you for having the first speech in English. So wonderful.
That's the transformation that's happening continuously. So now we are open to questions from this wonderful audience. We have time for about how many, Vaishali? 2 questions? 2 questions are okay? Yeah. If you can just state your name, where do you come from, why do you like me, and then the question. Third part you can drop. Just kidding.
My name is Shalom Yerushalmi. I came from Jerusalem, Israel. I would like to ask the Parliament member of Belgium, right? Yeah. Okay. You talked very nice, and your personal story is very sentimentally and exciting. But I want to ask you, what is your solution for the problem of the refugees who are coming? You didn't talk about that, and you also, Mr., didn't talk about the solution of the refugees who come from the Arab countries to Europe. Please.
Okay, you want me to start shortly? I don't think there is one single solution. I think there is many things that need to be done. First of all, the conflicts themselves. I mean, we have to end the conflict in Syria, because it all started there. If I'm now just talking about the European migration, the European refugee crisis, because at a global level, you will have conflicts everywhere, and it's always the conflict that needs to be stopped. And there are underlying reasons for conflicts. We heard in the previous session, poverty, inequality, also climate change, I must say, and we will see more of that. So this is the things that have to be tackled at the global level. We need global leadership. It has been said before, and I think we need solutions at a very high level with international collaboration. Like Mr. de Villepin said this morning, maybe, you know, ask to relocate refugees in areas where they can, you know, have a better life than how we treat now these people in Europe, I must say, because that's another part, the humanitarian part of the refugee crisis. When I look in my own country, where we have now a right-wing government, if they talk about migration and refugees, it is only in a way of repression. They're all, you know, Muslims, they're all terrorists, and we need to find them and make sure they don't come in, because we have our European values to safeguard. And then I wonder, what are these European values? What is this identity that we want to save? Is it really treating people in that way? Because I thought our Christian values in Europe, if I may use the religious background of most people in Europe, I thought it was helping people in need. And I see exactly the opposite, using the arguments of our own European identity, religion, and values. So this has to be changed, and I think in Europe, changing the mindset of people will be difficult. They're all afraid. They don't know these people coming in. They have never, in some villages in my country, they've never seen somebody from another country. You can't imagine it. Belgium is the center of Europe. It exists. People that have seen no foreigners in their village for years, and definitely not in their own community. So we have to teach them that these are also human beings with the same aspirations and dreams as we all have. And then people change. If you look at communal level, you see volunteers, you see people that want to teach the language and so on. It is the politicians actually that are taking decisions or having using the populist reflex, of course, of introducing fear against what is different. So I'm sorry to answer not with one answer. I think all these levels are important. You have the communal level, the local level, you have the national political level. Europe is, in my eyes, it's failing right now. We really need to change things how they're being done at the European level. But then there is the global level, because we are fighting our closing our borders between European countries, whereas half of the world is on fire. And how will we solve that? We need global leadership. I was very happy to hear this morning, that is the message that we should spread from this meeting. We really have to go back home and not think about what is happening in my backyard, but what is happening in the world and how we should solve that.
She was so good that I could totally support and save time.
Well, I'm very proud to come from a country where by law we give 0.7% of our gross domestic product to countries that are in need. We are setting a prime example that actually we have two sorts of people who are fleeing at the moment. There are the people fleeing violence, who are genuine refugees, and we have economic migrants. Yes. And it's important to distinguish between the two. The people that are refugees fleeing violence, we must help and we must protect. The economic migrants, what we must do is ensure that they have the ability in the countries from which they originate to live a full life. It is no good across Europe and across the rest of the world ending up with people fleeing from countries that are able to sustain a good quality of life in the belief that people are going to get a better quality of life somewhere else. Because by doing that, all we do is create a crisis right across the world. So it's important that we have proper trade, fair trade, and an ability to make sure that people can build a life that is fulfilling in the home in which they live.
We have a question from the lady at the back. Yeah.
One question. Can I ask?
Yeah, just, okay, go ahead, quickly.
My name is Ravi. I've come from Hyderabad. A lot of talk has been there about terrorism. There are two aspects to my mind I would like the panel to answer. Number one, the human mind itself is so violent, which has to be transformed through spirituality. Second aspect, no one has spoken about the role of the arms manufacturers, who are the ones creating the terrorists and also funding the governments to involve them.
Thank you, Ravi.
I would like the panel to...
Mr. Kara, would you like to?
First of all, I want to say about the refugees a few sentences. I think Europe do a big mistake, that is help the refugees at the land of Europe. I think the solution is to help the refugees in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Turkish, and of course to support them. It's important from the side of the humanitarian, but the solution not in Europe. This is big mistake for Europe, big mistake for the world, because we are now in extremes in the Middle East. Maybe tomorrow we found ourselves in big extremes in Europe, and we are not want that make Europe also so much danger like the Middle East. This is important. There are 2 million people in Turkish, 2 million in Jordanian, and 1 million in Lebanon. I'm too much. I give water as a minister in Israel, we going and supporting refugees in Jordan with water, with another humanitarian things. I think this is the process, the right process. I want to say about the terror, one thing. There are no solution for terror from the side of the defense. You're not fighting army. I was general in the army of Israel. I fighting the terror. I lose 2 brothers in this fighting. And I injuries in Beirut. And I think I'm now the head of the campaign against ISIS in the Middle East. I think it's the important thing to do is to go and check hands all the sides that thinking that the terror is the problem of the region or the area or the world, because no way to become with peace process in anywhere if the terror is part. Now the terror in much places become professional. The people need it. Maybe in the Islam world is 1%, but this is 1% exactly in the Arabian area that no one against them. They are not anyone say against them anything, and they are not fighting them. They are hypocrisy. They are not say the right loudly, stop the terror. No one say. They are afraid to say it. I'm saying it here. Anyone could be here that could shoot me. I'm not afraid from anyone, because the problem is the war. That hypocrisy did not say the right steps. They are not say that let us shake hands to stop this violence, this terror. The extremes is the problem with the world. And of course, all the world must standing and be brother. And everyone who believe with some religious, they could go be free on what he believe. It's not, from my side, it's no problem. The problem that if you want to lead me, believe with what you believe. This is the problem. And Iran and all the coalition of the Iran want to take all the area to steps that they believe. They use Israel as catalysator in this case, but they need to be again empire in the Middle East. We are not afraid from Iran, from anyone. Thank you very much.
There was a question from the lady there, and then give the mic to her. Yeah, after you through. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Jai Gurudev, dear brothers and sisters, Prime Minister, MPs, my colleague from England. My name is Sharda Lavingya. I come from UK. I am a very active parliament member. I'm sorry, Labour Party, so we are rivals, but we are friends. I'm a women officer for the Labour Party, and my dear brothers and sisters in UK have elected me, and they're all Muslims. I work with them, I eat with them, I live with them, and that in the area of Spark Hill, Birmingham, Midlands. What I suggest that all of Asian people, we go in the inner city, spread love, go with yoga, meditation, and that will change them. Spread love. Embrace them. They're not terrorists. I'm the only Indian lady working there for 25 years.
Thank you.
And I'm not finished, only Indian lady. And they're my friends. They wanted to come here, but they're doing campaigning. So they said, spread the message that we are peaceful in Birmingham. Yes, terrorist is there, but we don't know why. So we need to find those good people and work with them. My other question is very important. We say that let's clean our home, and then we help people outside, but at the same time, let's have a dialogue, which we are doing. I like to meet the Prime Minister of Transport Department of Delhi, because the transport system is ridiculous. I come from England. This is inner city. That's why Guruji is here. You have all seen from airport to this land. It is inner city. You all, my dears, Prime Minister, Minister, MPs, let's bring in the funding in Delhi. Let's develop this area. Let's develop the Jamuna River.
Thank you.
Are we going to do that?
No, I'll have to intercede. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's have the question from the other lady.
That's the question. Are you going to help develop the inner city?
Yes.
And clean the river Jamuna?
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is around, because you're talking about open borders and no borders. My question is that why is it that when there are porous borders, forget open borders, that's where terrorism comes in. I'm a Kashmiri Pandit. My community was persecuted and thrown out of their homes because of terrorism. The state still suffers, is not able to progress towards economic development because of that fear of terrorism. Why is it, it's all well and good to talk about peace, nobody wants violence, but why is it that when there are porous borders or open borders, that's where terrorism or trouble starts?
Thank you for that. One question from this side.
Sir, what happened? All over the world, we are talking about globalization, liberalization, and democracy also. But sometimes excessive democracy turns into mobocracy. Mobocracy. And because of mobocracy, can you feel that little bit guided democracy would be the all right alternative in this situation? And second one is, we are talking since morning about gender equality, economic equality, but primary education level, why we are not talking standard global pattern of education system for the children? Because sometimes education standard in America, it is going down. Sometimes it is in India, it is going down. But why the global forum is not discussing about this question?
Fine.
One more small question, last
Sir,
one.
you have taken 3 other people's questions. Okay.
One
quickly.
last question. Regarding political borders, your talker has given good example. Political borders created problem. There should be open borders. But political geography created all these problems. So geography is the cause of creating all these problems. So kindly guide us relating all these
Thank
questions.
you. Very nice questions. Okay, just one last question and then I'll go back to the panel. Yeah. You just talk. Very, very interesting question. Okay, the lady at the back. Last question and then I go for the summation. Just shout it out. Definitely. So now, very good questions. We can go on for the rest of the evening with those. So what I would request, starting from Dr. Petra, 1 or 2 sentences in summing up, if you would like to answer, but limited to 2 sentences, because people are hungry now. They'll start attacking me if we take much more longer.
Okay, maybe I will then address the last question, because what struck me was your question about the grassroots level. Personally, I think that if we don't find that global leadership yet, and we're all working towards it, and politicians take decisions just to be voted again at the next elections, and it's always short term, sorry to say that, but it is the grassroots level, it is the civil society, it is the people that bottom up will take initiatives to change the world. And I think that is the big hope for the future, in my view.
Okay, 2 sentences, yeah. Ayub Kara.
I would take the chance here, my leader, to say that I'm very happy to be in India. It's the first time that I'm here. I'm going for and visiting all the world, exactly, Africa, Europe, America. This is the first time that I'm here. Israel love India. The president of India, I checked their hands before 2 months in the Knesset, in the parliament. It was good visitors. We think that India and Israel must go together from the side of the economic and other things, and we cooperate. Thank you very much that you invite me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ja, auch nur 2 ganz kurze Bemerkungen.
Okay, 2 short statements from my side.
Der erste bezieht sich auf die Frage, die Flüchtlinge vor Ort zu unterstützen, dass sie dort weiter leben können. Und da ist es dann wichtig, dass die großen Länder und die Industrieländer auch ihren Verpflichtungen nachkommen, zum Beispiel für das World Food Programm zu zahlen. Ich war in Jordanien in einem großen Flüchtlingslager Und da hat auch Deutschland und andere Länder ihre Zahlungen nicht geleistet, sodass die Essensrationen halbiert werden. Und dann muss man sich nicht wundern, wenn viele Flüchtlinge sich auf den Weg machen.
The first statement is about supporting the refugees there where they are. But that means that the developed nations also have to fulfill their commitments. He was himself in Jordan, where there was a big refugee camp, and many countries, including Germany, did not fulfill their obligations to pay, so that food rations had to be cut to half. So then it's no wonder that these refugees are coming.
Und die zweite Bemerkung ist eine eher grundsätzliche, die bei solchen Konferenzen immer eine Rolle spielt. Wir haben viel gehört von ehemaligen Ministern, ehemaligen Premierministern, was geändert werden müsste. Ich wünsche mir, dass diejenigen zu den Erkenntnissen nicht nur kommen, wenn sie nicht mehr im Amt sind, sondern wenn sie die Macht haben und im Amt etwas verhindern können und dass sie es dann auch tun.
And the second statement is more fundamental. We heard many great statements from former statements, and his wish is that the statesmen also say words like this when they are still in office, and that they take also painful decisions to defend these rights.
Yeah, besides improving the public transport in Delhi and cleaning the Yamuna River, I think the Labour lady from London is really practicing the message of Sri Ravi Shankar that you should avoid ghettos, you should avoid silos, you should avoid hatred, you should engage in dialogue, in meeting, in open up minds, and I think that's a very good example what she is doing there, and let's do it everywhere.
Can I just say, it is government's job to ensure that terrorism is stamped out. It is, and that means preventing state-sponsored terrorism wherever it rears its ugly head. It is the responsibility of leaders to lead and to generate enthusiasm for change across the world. And it's the responsibility of all of us to be part of that change, to deliver for the world a better future, a brighter future for all concerned. And the important thing as we come together today is not the here and now of the problems. It is what is going to happen for the future of this planet. And unless we think long and hard about the future of our planet, we are destined for our humanity to be wiped off the face of this planet. So unless we wise up quickly and change our habits and our attitude, then nothing actually will change for the better. And the message of Sri, I think, is key here. And that is, once again, I come back to what we said at the beginning. Chaos requires good leadership, and it's up to us to make order of the chaos.
I have one more very happy duty to wish a very happy birthday to Mr. Ayub Kara. It's his birthday today. With this, we declare this session closed. We would like to felicitate our speakers. And Vaishali, you'll make the announcements for the lunch and the buses.